In vain I have struggled. My feelings will not be contained. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I dislike Bridgerton. Hi, folks. It's Sarah, the Fat Culture Critic. And yeah, wish I liked this. In some ways, suppose I'm the target audience, middle aged and all that. But I don't, and I find it actually I find it infuriating. I find it troubling. But before I begin, so those of you who know me know this, but I do not entertain any kind of discussion about whether or not people of color, fat people, other non default setting people belong in media or on your screen. I am not here for that discussion. I am always here for a discussion on how we do that well. But whether diversity and inclusion, and I stress inclusion over diversity, the whether is not something I'm going to debate. The how, we can always have a discussion. And if you pollute my comment section with your bigotry, it will be mocked or deleted or possibly both. Season 3 of Bridgerton. Well, there are some beautiful images because let me say that Nicola Coughlan is breathtakingly beautiful. Rubens would weep to paint her. She is stunning. Of course, she's not everyone's cup of tea, but absolutely nobody is everyone's cup of tea, and she does happen to be mine. Not that I'm going to go into that, but yes, the images are lovely. But there aren't just images here, there is also a story. And the narrative is where the problem is. So, yeah, she is a beautiful woman. I won't entertain that silly person's notion that she isn't pretty enough for the cardboard man they put her with. I'm sure that actor is also talented when given good writing. And yeah, like the thing about Bridgerton, they're very good actors. And also like the crew, there's a lot of talent. The lighting is beautiful, the sets, the choices with the costumes are not to my taste. It's not a way that I would go, but I can see the choices there. I can see the craft, and yeah, just because it's a choice I would make doesn't make it a bad one. They're doing it for a reason, and okay. So yeah, there's a lot of talent there, and it feels a little like you show up to a nice restaurant and it's really pretty, and there's fancy chefs and cloth linen napkins and silver service and even the cloche thing that goes over the dish, and they would bring up the cloche and they've served you bog standard mac and cheese out of a box. And there's nothing wrong with mac and cheese out of a box. it has its place because it's very useful when you don't have the spoons and you don't have the resources or whatever, but Netflix is using like Michelin star level talent and, a whole lot of resources to present us with bog standard mac and cheese. And not even like the good kind. This is not just like the dehydrated powder, like the very basic meh. And again, to be clear, like Nicola Coughlan and the other actors, they are the silver service. The story is the box mac and cheese. And it's just a waste. But even if it was just that it's a waste, that wouldn't be reason enough to make a video about it. Like when I joked about, in vain I have struggled, because sometimes I like to ham it up, but I have actually been struggling because part of me says, be quiet and let people enjoy things. And part of me, although I find this all I find it very, very, very irritating. But I'm not sure if it's at first I wasn't sure if it was in the sort of neurodivergent way you get annoyed when people get your um when people are playing in your special interest and getting it wrong. Because like Jane Austen and this period of history, and that is very much my special interest. Although I try not to romanticize it, but like just to engage with what the history actually is. I find a lot of it really fascinating, and Jane Austen has been one of my favorite authors forever. And this is not Jane Austen, but it feels like it's like homeopathy Jane Austen, like it's like diluted diluted umpty number of times. It's like Georgette Heyer fan fiction. The if you get that, if you get that, let me know. If you get that reference, I was like, well, am I just responding to that irritation? That like, where are the chaperones? Where are the vicars? Kind of irritation, but like sitting with it for a while, especially after this last season, I feel like no, there is more of substance to talk about, especially as this is now playing in fat representation territory. And the thing about Bridgerton is it's not like some Hallmark movie, because it is getting the kind of attention and being centered as an institution in culture. It is, moving the culture. Like we just saw a Doctor Who episode that was inspired by Bridgerton and much, 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 much better than anything Bridgerton has ever done. And not just because it's queer. So when something is having that much cultural resonance, you do have to look at it. And, it is playing in fat representation now, although Nicola Coughlan she's very much small fat. This is Hollywood fat, where she's like the size of the average American or British person, really. But because she has a round face and well endowed, Hollywood constructs that as fat. And the narrative has constructed. I'll get at it. So, yeah, this becomes fat representation. And so we have to talk about what this narrative is telling us about fat representation. I'm going to begin a little bit with the world building that's here. And then I will talk about the relationship and the guy. And then I'm going to talk about the narrative itself. And then I'll get back into the world building and broader implications. So this world bears less resemblance to the actual historical Regency era than like Game of Thrones does to medieval history, or like the D&D does to actual medieval history. I don't just mean that there's like a magical end to racism, pop music, and all the polyester, but like Queen Charlotte appears to wield actual power and be an absolute monarch, and rather than Parliament or Prince George. There is a remarkable lack of vicars or soldiers of the Napoleonic Wars, and somehow there's social mobility without that being like the everything of the plot, because that was unusual. So my point being is that they have constructed their own world. They've borrowed bits and pieces from Jane Austen fan fiction, really. They've chosen the pieces that they want, and they're not actually presenting history, and that's really important because when it comes to like the representation of fatness, it's presenting the way that fatness is viewed now, and it's doing that consciously, and it is constructed because that was not how fat people were viewed at the time. So sometimes we overcorrect and people say that, fat people were always valued through history. And that isn't true exactly. And no, Penelope's body is not what would be the height of fashion 1815 or 1810. They were particularly obsessed with Greece So the height of fashion was actually more like the Grecian statues. So tall, long face, long neck, but with some weight. So, like a number of the other women in Bridgerton, the young women, would be thought of as kind of scrawny by their standards, and she would have been thought of as a bit too much. But we're talking about the height of fashion. They were, just because someone wasn't the height of fashion doesn't mean they were instantly deemed unattractive. And in the Rococo period, which was like about a generation before, then Nicola Coughlin's looks would have been very popular. The auburn hair and then the skin in the, yeah, and then again in the Romantic period, that again would have been more popular. And then things start to get more focused on thinness, even as it is bouncing back and forth a bit. But the reasons for that and all that can be found in Sabrina String's incredible book, Fearing the Fat Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia. She wouldn't have been the height of fashion, but she also wouldn't have been seen as unattractive because, hey, they had eyes and she is a beautiful woman. And also, attractiveness was not the most important feature. The most important feature was, what is your dowry and who is your family connected to? That's the real Regency. If a Regency story doesn't tell you exactly how much property a man owns and exactly what a woman's dowry is, totally not in the period. Point being, they had the storytellers here have made a choice to make her body an issue. And they do it from the very first time we meet her. Her first scene involves her sister being tight-laced into a corset while her mother talks about having had the waistline of 2 oranges. And also her sister tells her that she's 2 stone overweight. Okay. A tight-lacing scene is guaranteed to piss off any historical enthusiast, because that isn't a thing. What they wore at the time weren't actually corsets. It was called stays. They look like this, more upholstered than boned, and you could not functionally tight lace them, and they weren't actually any more uncomfortable really than a bra. They just kind of gave you shape, same way a bra did. There was also the shorter ones that were much more like a bra. The filmmakers are making a choice when they put in the tight lacing scene, when they draw attention to her mother trying to have everybody have a tiny waist, and when her sister says that she is too big to be attractive. This is the choice. They are setting up this world to be like this. There is an experience that happens to fat women. I don't know if it happens to fat men, but can't say for sure that it happens to all fat women. I know it has happened to me multiple times. Someone comes up to you and says, most people don't like fat chicks, but fill in the explanation of why he finds you. And it's not about me when someone says that to me. It's not a compliment. Because they are telling me that the world doesn't find me attractive, but look how special they are because they do. It feels very much like the story is doing that, doing a version of that, saying, people don't like fat women. Here is a fat woman who is being overlooked because of her weight. And yes, there are other reasons why Penelope is overlooked, but the one that is most consistently drawn attention to is her weight. And not just comments like this, but the way that they dress her for the first 2 seasons is constantly to emphasize her body in an unflattering way. And we know, again, this is a choice because the costumes don't actually follow the cut of Regency Empire waisted clothing usually. And Regency, it's correctly, the waist is under the bust, not across the bust. That's a baby doll. And that's very unflattering to anyone with large boobs because you just look like a sack. And If the costume designer has chosen to dress someone to look like a sack instead of up under the bust line and flow down, like this is a choice to make her look bad. Add to that the colors that they choose. And yes, I mean there's an element of that is that well, her mother is making these decisions and her mother has poor taste. So what we're being shown is the mother's poor taste and the body being not not the kind that is deemed wanted. And the final thing is that until the third season, I didn't really see any other young fat women. Um, and I noticed when I did in the third season, they are all Hollywood thin, which is not even like the normal diversity of bodies, but all very, very much the Hollywood ideal of thin. Like to contrast this with another period piece, Harlots, which I happen to love and also happens to have Nicola Coughlan in it. In that, there is a diversity of bodies shown. She is not the fattest character. Fanny is, and she's delightful. And all of the women in all of the different sizes and shapes are all presented as desirable. Not everybody gets to fall in love because it's not that kind of show. But yeah, there is a conscious effort there made to present a variety of body types as there is in life, a variety of body types. Whereas consciously or unconsciously, most Hollywood properties present us a world that is populated almost entirely by thin people. And when there are non-thin people, they're usually men. This is why representation matters and why representation is not one special character who gets one narrative. A diversity of bodies is how you get towards inclusion. Anyway, so we have set up that Penelope is undervalued because of her body, because of, among other things about her, that is not, that she goes unseen in this world. That's why she is the wallflower. And the most visible, most shown to us aspect of that is her body. So this is a fat narrative. We are very used to story worlds where fat women are assumed to be unwanted, often with little conscious thought or intent. Even outside fictional media, like that is such a common narrative that fat people are unwanted. Fat women, particularly, are unattractive and unwanted. Just try looking at Twitter. If you see a confident fat woman, you will inevitably see people telling her exactly what's wrong with her. Oh, look, I bet you'll find some in my comment section too. And it's an idea that's been reified by the hegemonic culture. By that, I mean it is a socially constructed idea that is treated as a natural phenomenon. And part of the problem with Bridgerton presenting modern beauty ideals in the past is it adds to this reification by making it seem as if this has always been the way that fatness is viewed. In reality, there is a diversity of bodies and a diversity of attractions. People find different people and different bodies attractive. But we are told that there is one type that is attractive, one type that is desirable and lovable. We are told that fat women are unwanted. And because this is such a common narrative, there's nothing really wrong with consciously presenting a world in which a fat woman is unwanted as the way to start your narrative. What matters is what do they do with the setup? Where does the story go? Okay, so this is the setup for Penelope's story. And it's a love story. I love a good love story. I do. Love is an incredibly powerful experience. How one goes about seeking it, how you respond to finding it, or to not finding it, or to losing it, these are all things that can shape a person and reveal a person. And it's great story stuff, but it depends on the story that's told. So what's the story here? So Penelope has unrequited love for Colin, who is the boy next door, and the brother of her friend. At first, we see her watch him pursue her cousin, which causes her to lash out anonymously through the whistle down thing. She later overhears him saying he'd never court her, and eventually she confronts him on this and ends up asking him to teach her how to flirt. And when rumor of that gets out, she asks him to kiss her because she thinks she'll never be kissed. Then she goes to try and start to build a connection with another outsider that looks to have potential. But Colin makes a scene to blow that up because ever since the kiss, he now has been pining for her. And when the other guy realizes she loves Colin, he sort of bows out. And then Colin then throws himself on her and they have a very naughty carriage ride and become engaged. So this has been called Friends to Lovers, and I disagree. Friends to Lovers is a delightful narrative. I love Friends to Lovers. It's delightful in real life too, and I've been lucky enough to experience it. Didn't last, but that's life. And so the thing about love stories in general is love is about being seen. It's about someone seeing you, and in a happy story, someone choosing you. In an unhappy story, they don't, and that can also be a good story. That is usually what makes a love story work. Enemies to Lovers works because the characters see each other's worst side first and then have to learn to see the good. So they've seen all parts of each other by the time they're in love. Exes reuniting works because the characters have seen each other in love and out of it and in conflict and chosen them again. Love stories where the lovers work together or fight together because they see each other, working through whatever the conflict or the test or the thing is. Through that, they see each other. And sometimes there are tragic love stories where they see each other and they can't be together, and The Sopranos sings and we all cry. And finally, Friends to Lovers. Friends to Lovers works because a close friendship, a real friendship bond, someone sees who you are and knows who you are over time, and they see all of you and they still choose you. To make a Friends to Lovers work, you have to see the friendship. Think about how much When Harry Met Sally spends showing us Harry and Sally building their friendship. We see conversation after conversation after conversation, and before they even kiss, they know each other intimately. That's Friends to Lovers. You know, and the storyteller has to show us the friendship and show us that it's a special friendship, and then show the transition into love. And another important aspect of Friends to Lovers is the balance of affection. Harry and Sally care about each other about the same amount the whole way through the film, until they sleep together and his issues get in the way, and then he has to rebalance by humbling himself. Like, there is a balance. If you look at a good Friends to Lovers, you will find a balance of affection. So let's look at Colin and Penelope. Do the storytellers show us a friendship? Show them seeing one another and knowing one another? They tell us the characters are friends. Many times they tell us that they have been friends and are friends for years. And they do show us Penelope and Eloise's friendship. But Colin and Penelope, it's all tell and no show. What they actually show us is Penelope pining for Colin. Because this isn't a Friends to Lovers. This is an unrequited love that gets requited. You see this in Mansfield Park, you see it in Jane Eyre, you see it in Cyrano de Bergerac. As one character is devoted to another character who usually doesn't notice them. And eventually, in the return, eventually the devotion is rewarded because the object of affection is either secretly in love with them all along or finally notices. Not a very satisfying end to a story, to be honest. Or it goes unrequited and, the lover dies, probably singing, very operatic. There might be rain in a barricade. Unrequited love is very romantic and tragic and makes for great opera. But it isn't really love. It's hyperfixation. And by its nature, it's rather parasocial because it's not really being in love with the person. It's not really seeing the person because you don't really pine for someone you actually see and know as a person, as a human. You do that for an idol, for someone that you have idealized, someone you've put on a pedestal, an object of your affection. So you're treating someone as an object. So yeah, it's parasocial and yeah, it's not actually love. And again, obviously, obviously unequal affection. Which is very different than friends to lovers, even if the object of your affection is your friend. And that is what they show us with Penelope and Colin. She pines for him, then he pines for her. Then boom, engagement. There's not a friendship that show. And yeah, there's some story after the engagement, and then I will get to that. But yeah, point is, I don't really think of this as friends to lovers. It's unrequited love, which in this case happens to be unrequited on both sides. The idolization on both sides. And the thing about unrequited love is it is usually not on both sides. It's usually unrequited for a reason. If love is about seeing and they don't see you, it's not a match. If you see an idealized version and not the actual person, it's not a match. And the fact that it isn't a match can be a good place for a story, but it's a story about the mismatching. A lot of character growth can come from a story about mismatching, but this story doesn't do that. Everyone who has unrequited love wants or thinks they want the love to be returned. So the love being returned in the story is wish fulfillment. It's also tends to be a bit wish fulfillment for the author, because if we like the character, we want them to have what they want. Or we think we want them to have what they want, right? Like a great example, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The character of Willow begins the story with unrequited love for her best friend, Xander. And we, the audience, love Willow. And it's natural to kind of want her to have what she wants, even though we can see that Xander is not a particularly good boyfriend and may not be the best for her. And it would be really easy for the writers to give us what we think we want. But they don't. They give us something we don't expect. Oz.
Canapé.
Oz sees Willow immediately and is upfront about how much he likes her. And they get close. And there is a point in a story where she asked him to make out with her. And he says this.
I think about kissing you, and it's like everything stops. It's like freeze frame. Willow kissing you. Oh, I'm not gonna kiss you.
What? But freeze frame.
Well, to the casual observer, it would appear that you're trying to make your friend Xander jealous, or even the score, or something. And that's on the empty side. See, in my fantasy, when I'm kissing you, you're kissing me.
I don't know about anybody else in the audience, but Xander who? That speaks just is like, I didn't know I wanted this for her. And because of that, her character grows with that relationship with Oz until it ends. And then there is more growth, and then there is someone new with even more opportunity for growth. So none of that would have happened if they had given the audience what they wanted right away. You know, if they had given her Xander. Where's the growth in that? And that's kind of what they do with Penelope. And the growth in Willow's story is what makes Willow's story matter. All these longing looks, all this moping, not growth. Well, there's a little bit of growth for Colin, but only because his character is so dial in cardboard that there's nothing that can happen but growth. He's kind of an awkward boy in season 1, then he's a jerk who talks about Penelope behind her back, and then he goes off and bangs half of Europe and returns a pompous ass, probably carrying a case of syphilis from all the aforementioned banging. And his only character trait other than horny is sulky, and he gets super big sulky when he learns that Penelope is Lady Whistledown. The sulk intensifies when he realizes that she's a better and more successful writer than him. So let's look to the post-engagement plot and the Whistledown stuff. So Penelope creates the persona of Lady Whistledown because she feels unseen. And for some reason in this world, this Queen Charlotte is obsessed with this little gossip column, despite the fact that the real Queen Charlotte had to contest with images like this of herself in the press. Yeah, anyway, again, this is not history. And so for some manufactured conflict reason, the Queen is hunting for Lady W, and so Penelope eventually outs herself to the Queen and to the public and gives this speech about finding self-confidence and how much she wanted to be a part of their world. And it satisfies everyone and butterflies and yada, yada, yada. And now the sisters who body shamed her want their daughters to grow up to be her. And also, Sulky Boy has been cured of his envy and now wants to devote his life to her because she's given a speech about self-confidence. Penelope's arc is an Ugly Ducklings type of story. It's about an overlooked girl gaining confidence. And so I want to compare Penelope's arc with a similar arc from a better story. So Dumplin' is a 2018 film also from Netflix, and it features a small fat protagonist, Willadine, who lives in an anti-fat world, 2010s Texas. She has a difficult relationship with her conventionally attractive mother, she has a thin best friend, and there is a cute boy. First of all, in Willadine's case, the anti-fat world is represented specifically by the teen pageant scene in the era of the obesity epidemic moral panic. So the anti-fatness is a part of that world. And just the nature of the pageant and the way it's presented to us, it gives it this sense of it being an artificial thing. Whereas in Bridgerton, adding contemporary anti-fat attitudes into a historical setting makes them seem more naturalized. And also, in Bridgerton, we come from an omnipotent narrator's point of view, whereas in Dumplin', it is very much through Willadine's eyes. So we see the harms of diet culture in her world and in her relationship with her perpetually dieting mother. And as to her mother, their issues are grounded in real emotions. Both feel like real people, so you see them wanting to connect and you see why it's hard for them. Whereas in Bridgerton, her mother is rather cartoonish and bullying. There's nothing wrong with having a cartoonish bullying character even as a mother, but if you want to present a reconciliation with a character like that, it tends to feel forced. So Willadine's story is she and her best friend Ellen decide to participate in Willadine's mother's beauty pageant. They're doing this to make a statement, but Ellen gets swept up in the pageant life and Willadine feels left out. But then Willadine connects with a few other outsiders and they decide to do the pageant seriously, but on their own terms. Like Penelope, it is a story of confidence and self-love. However, unlike Penelope's story, we actually see Willadine developing her confidence. It's not a makeover and a couple scenes of talking to guys. We actually see her connecting with others who are also outsiders, particularly with other fat characters. We see her trying new things, we see her building skills, and we see her dealing with some of her emotional issues. And whereas in Bridgerton, finding confidence is treated as the answer. Self-love just fixes everything. Find your confidence and the boy will marry you. Your mom and your sisters will suddenly admire you. In Dumplin', the stakes are smaller. Finding confidence is the beginning of a bridge with her mother. It rights a faltering friendship, and it helps her take a chance on the boy who has always been open about liking her. So while Fat Girl Finds Her Confidence stories are way overdone, there are ways to do it that still has something to offer. And when you compare Bridgerton to one of those, Bridgerton just doesn't offer anything. Confidence fixes everything is, again, another wish fulfillment thing. We want self-love to fix everything. We want Penelope's mother to see her value because she's able to speak up for herself. We want everyone to see that Penelope is witty and observant and a talented writer and to think that that gives worth, which, again, in the Regency era, would not have been what considered worth. We want everything to work out for the main character. It's not the job of a good storyteller to give the audience everything it wants. Maybe a few things as a treat after the growth. But a good storyteller gives a character what they need to grow and to change and to find what they never expected to find. Frodo wants to go home and live a peaceful life. Luke wants to go and get some power converters from Tashi Station. Buffy wants to be a normal girl. What characters want isn't necessarily what they should have. Most of the time, it isn't. Maybe you give it to them at the end of the story, or maybe you give it to them when they are able to realize that it's not actually what they want. That is a fun story. But just giving characters what they want, just giving the audience what they want, it's lazy storytelling. And again, Nicola Coughlan is a talented actor, and she really tries to give this character depth. But the writing is not interested in giving her meaningful growth. And even if it was just shallow, lazy storytelling, and it would be annoying and a waste, but there's plenty of shallow media out there. So why does it matter? It matters because this narrative is so much shoved at fat people. It is the dominant narrative around fat people is just find your confidence, love yourself, and it'll fix everything. It doesn't matter if the world judges you by your body. If you show your worth, it'll fix everything. Just be positive. Don't bring up the systemic problems or complain about stuff that needs to be fixed. Just love yourself. If that isn't working, then maybe you need to love yourself harder. That's not working. Okay, love yourself even harder. Is that making you thin? Is that making you acceptable fat? If you keep being positive and happy and cheerful enough to not make trouble for anyone. You can't. Cheerful and self-love yourself out of systemic oppression. It doesn't work like that. You cannot self-love yourself into better healthcare and more accessible seating and close the wage gap between fat and thin people. You cannot self-love yourself out of systemic oppression. Loving yourself does not fix other people's prejudices.
Like superficial spirituality, looking on the bright side of things is a euphemism used for obscuring certain realities of life, the open consideration of which might prove threatening or dangerous to the status quo.
In the Feminist Killjoy Handbook, Sarah Ahmed comments on this quote of Lord's using the metaphor of polished surfaces and faked smiles in pictures, the way that it masks the messy truths of life. But if you look through the polished surfaces, you look through the things that are being polished and the things that are being erased, like, say, the labor of doing the polishing, you can see through happiness. And when Ahmed speaks of happiness, she's not talking about a satisfied and fulfilling life or the brief enjoyment of a good mood. This is the ideal of happiness with a capital H. It's like the pleasant surface life that is assumed that we can all pursue in the pursuit of happiness. The thing that is spoiled by being different is the easy wish fulfillment of being like everyone else, which is supposed to be a passport to this good life. It is in fact proximity to whiteness. That's how she describes happiness. And in this case, we can also read it as proximity to thinness, also proximity to straightness. Pick a default, proximity to that. It all boils down to the same colorless, bland ideal of happiness. It's all about maintaining the status quo. And a reminder, whiteness in this proximity to whiteness thing was a construct, not just pale skin. And that's where we get into the wider problems of Bridgerton, because just like self-love will get me better healthcare, love will fix racism. Bridgerton's premise is presenting a counterfactual where Queen Charlotte of Mecklenburg, who married George III, was Black. And because King George loved her, the crown elevated a group of wealthy Black people into the aristocracy. And somehow thus ended racism against Black people and other people of color too. Desi people and Asian people as well. Somehow. I haven't yet seen any Arab people, but this is not a world in which I really want to see myself, to be honest. So, as a counterfactual, it is an interesting idea. What would a diverse aristocracy look like? How would that change England? There's a lot of story potential there. There were some wealthy Black people. Jane Austen's unfinished novel Sanditon included a Black heiress, and the recent adaptation expanded on this character.
Miss Georgiana Ladd.
And the idea of doing this at this particular time could be really interesting as a counterfactual, because Britain at the time was in the fight over slavery. The kind of lifestyle represented in Bridgerton, the obscene wealth and privilege, that is funded on sugar trade and exploitation of the land as well. The sugar trade, that means slavery. And most people, especially those in power, couldn't imagine a world without it. Their economic system was so ingrained to them that they couldn't imagine anything else. But there were people who were trying to change that. Some of them were doing that with a boycott. So that and the exploitation of the poor people through foreign laws at the time, and unrepresentative elections, rubber boroughs, and women's education and place in society. These were the main issues of the day, which means it could make for some really interesting counterfactuals to reflect on another time period I could mention where a lot of similar issues are happening. So yeah, they could have done something interesting. Instead, we get love fixed racism. And to be clear, it is not my place to tell Black or Desi people how they should feel about this. Like, if they're enjoying the escapism of this, not my place to say that they shouldn't. But the thing is, they aren't the only people watching the show, or the people that the show is centered around. But I do know how I would feel. I know how I feel when people talk about the time after 9/11 as this great big time of unity when everybody came together and everyone was all happy. And I know that if white people were enjoying a show that presented that vision of history and had everybody totally accepting Middle Eastern people without any problems, I would be annoyed. It might be a real pleasant thing, but it would be bullshit. And I would go out in the real world and we would still have to deal with the reality, the legacy of the Islamophobia and the anti-Arab racism that time built into the world. And when we just pretend that the systems don't exist, then we're giving people a false idea of how change happens. Because the change from now is not going to happen by us just pretending things can be different.
The injunction to be positive makes an individual not only the problem, but also the solution, as if you can stop yourself from being ill or poor or discriminated against by acquiring a more positive outlook. The injunction to be positive is cruel. Pretending problems don't exist, not make them go away. Love doesn't fix racism. Any child of a mixed marriage can tell you that love is powerful, and love can motivate you to work through the problems, and the love can help sustain you through the work. Because the power of love is that it discomforts you, that it challenges you. Seeing someone who they really are and being seen by someone for who you really are makes you reflect on yourself, makes you see yourself in new ways. And oh boy, that's an incredible opportunity for growth. And the power of seeing is also the power of representation, real representation of what it really takes to deal with the world of who we really are as fat people, as queer people, as non-white people. That is the opportunity for growth. And showing people who we really are gives them an opportunity, if they are not like us, to reflect on who they are and how they see us. And that is a space for growth. This is why I want stories with more people who are not like me. I do want stories of people who are like me. I don't see enough of them. But I also want stories of people who aren't like me, to challenge me, not to give me my wish fulfillment easy, not to be comfort and easy. They created a world where Penelope was unwanted because of her body. That could have been an opportunity to show what is wrong with the world. Because, hey, those things are true of this world too. Instead, Penelope praises the people of that world and says she wants to be a part of it. And just has to find the confidence to be a part of it. Overall, this is a show about conformity and assimilation, and it's about shallow positivity. And the writing is lazy. And at its heart, it's a very conservative show. It's reinforcing the status quo. It's reifying the powerful into having positions of power. Power protects itself. It is conservative. And I'm not saying you can't enjoy it because it's conservative. But if you watch a story that reinforces the status quo, it's best to do that critically. If we love stories, then we should let our love of love stories fuel
the challenge to fight for good ones, to fight for sincerity, to fight for to fight for stories that are inclusive and not just diverse. Because love is a powerful force. Love stories are great. They can make you better. And I love stories. that I think is my primary love. I love stories, and I want better stories. And I want you to want better stories. And then this is not a good story. This it's not a great narrative about love, about fat people. It is boring. And within the boring is some kind of iffy ingredients. Nicola Coughlan deserved better. Fat people deserve better than this. We deserve a good, sincere story about fat love. And queer love and black love and brown love and and ace love. And self-love. So tell me, what would a sincere love story about fat people be? I don't know. But you know what I would really love? I would love to read some in the comments. So if you're a fat person who's found love, or any other marginalized person who has found love, why don't you tell us your love story in the comments? Like, maybe we tell each other our love stories and the love stories that we want sincerely. Maybe that's how we start to get better ones. I don't know. But if you like this story, that's fine. But hopefully you found something of value in what I had to say. And if not, well, thanks for the engagement. I would like to thank my Patreon supporters. They are the lovely people whose names are listed somewhere. And I deeply appreciate them. And if you would like to join them that would be lovely. And if not, then you can always follow me in the various places that are listed in the thingy. And I hope to have more videos soon. I'm in a better headspace generally. And I hope to have more that are talking about things I love rather than talking about things I don't, because I don't really like talking about things that I don't. But sometimes you need to be a killjoy. While I have your attention, if you, like me, are concerned about what's happening in Gaza, there are some links here to give what you can, whether it's time, attention, or money, to help the people who are suffering.